All right, I'm here with Mark Levin, director of An American Bombing, The Road to April 19th. I guess I'll start off with this is a documentary about the Oklahoma City bombing, kind of what led up to it. And that happened almost 30 years ago. So I guess what brought you to this documentary now?
Well, Eric, I think two things. One, Daphne and I had done a documentary for NBC with Bill Moyers back in 1995, 96, after the bombing. It was called Oklahoma City 1 year later. And it focused on the victims and the families of victims and survivors. We were there after the bombing, and the characters, some of the characters that you see in the film, Kathy, uh, Marcia, Bud, LaDonna, Nancy, we met them all 29 years ago. So in a way, this is coming full circle. The other side of that equation is, of course, everything that's happening now and the rise of the threat of domestic terrorism and political violence and extremism, and the sense that to understand how we got here, what we're dealing with now, especially here in New York, the first trial of Trump starts on Monday, and there's already apprehension in the air, and you go downtown Manhattan, you feel it. We felt that you can't understand what's happening now without going back and understanding what was happening then. The seeds of so much of what we're dealing with now can be found in the story of the Oklahoma City bomb. So those were the two main forces that led us to say, yeah, let's take a deeper look. Let's look at the larger story and the movement. Timothy McVeigh was often portrayed as a lone bomber, as a crazed bomber, but was never connected to a larger movement that was happening and that we trace back to the early 80s and that we're in many ways living with now.
I don't know. There's a couple of parts in this that kind of made me want to throw up in my mouth. There was the one guy that was talking about a bunch of gay people, and he was like, "Yeah, I was just ready to go in and kill them all." And then I went into a church and saw they were praying to the imaginary sky god, just like me. And all of a sudden now it's like, dude, you got to the right answer, but for the way wrong reason.
Right. Well, that character, though, is an important character. I mean, you put your finger on two things. First of all, even though we had done this film back then, we were not aware that there was this plot. I know there were some stories back then, but we were not aware that there was an original plot to blow up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City back in 1983. So that was a bit mind blowing. And then to find somebody that was part of that plot. And then, as you say, when that plot kind of fell apart and then they went to a second plot and they were going to blow up a church, and he came very close, but had a religious epiphany. And as you described it, to the great sky god, as he says in the film, they were no longer homosexuals, they were Christians, and I couldn't kill Christians. And thank God for that. That was an important story, really important story. And Kerry became a key character for us because not only was he part of that and that movement that was growing in Arkansas back in the 80s when Clinton was governor, but he saw the light eventually, not only in that moment in the church, but the larger light once he got out of prison and became a speaker and kind of an advocate of de-radicalization. And so very important, I think, for the film to have a character from that perspective. Unfortunately, he passed away a year ago, but we were close to him and we're very thankful he was able to be in the film.
What's your responsibility, or what do you feel is your responsibility as a documentarian? Because I ask this about people that do documentaries. I think when people watch movies like based on a true story, I think a little part of your brain's like, yeah, well, this is a movie, so there's some latitude there to make stuff up if you want to. But I think when people watch a documentary, they're expecting this to be the facts true, and not all documentarians do that. That's why we have propaganda, obviously. But like, what's your kind of take on the responsibility of a documentary filmmaker?
Well, I would like you just said, there are many kinds of documentaries, and then that's one of the exciting things about the documentary field and how it's grown, is you've got so many different subgenres. So in journalistic documentaries, which this I guess could be seen, although we take certain stylistic license, like with the Road Warrior, et cetera. But no, we were and Daphne, did a great job in fact checking and then making sure there are sources beyond when certain people make allegations. Certain people can express their opinion. That's fine. I believe whatever. But when they're making hard allegations, like let's take here's an example, the allegation that in the siege in Waco, that the ATF used the idea that the Branch Davidians had a meth lab, which they didn't, as a way to bring the military in so it could become more of a military operation. Well, we had to source that, and that was congressional hearings were taken and, and other investigative reports. So in a film like this, where you're dealing with obviously explosive issues and political issues, we were very, very aware that we had to fact check. There had to be multiple sources, and that when people had expressed their opinions, that it was clear they were expressing an opinion.
Granted, this documentary is very heavy, and as I mentioned earlier, like triggered the hell out of me in a very engaging way. By the way, I'm going through your IMDb, and you've done like a whole bunch of stuff, like editing, cinematography, writing. Like, what's kind of your favorite sort of job? I guess just as far as filmmaking goes. Like, what do you get the most joy out of?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, look, directing is obviously, putting it all together. But I started as a kid in the editing room. As a teenager, I was on the film Gimme Shelter, which is an all-time classic. And I think that stayed with me my whole life. I eventually became an editor. And that was what led me to directing and producing and writing. And so I think in the end, going in the editing room and being alone in the editing room, or working with an editor, I mean, there's something about you control the universe there. As a director, it's always triage. It's like, get this, I wanted to get that. If you get, half of what, you were thinking about the night before, you probably had a pretty productive day, but it's eternally frustrating. And in documentaries and in features, you're always striving for more. But in the editing room, you are the master of the universe. You've got it all, especially now with the technology we've got today. So that's my safe room. That's where I go, and when you say that, that's where I just feel most comfortable. I like directing, of course, I love directing, but it's stressful and it's always frustrating. And I'm always wondering, I could have done this. I could have done that. Why didn't I ask that question? Why didn't we shoot it in this way? Why did I put the camera there? Whereas in the editing room, it's like, oh, let's try it this way. Oh, let's try it that way. Oh, let's try it this way. You've got it all. So I'd say that's where I'm most at home.
And I also got to ask, I saw you did, at least according to IMDb, played in Shallow Hal. It's your one acting credit, or is that?
No, I think that's wrong. My only real on-camera appearance is in, a little a la Michael Moore. I did a film called Protocols of Zion after 9/11. Documentary on the rise of anti-Semitism in the wake of 9/11. And that was the only film where I, like Michael Moore, come out from behind the camera and, kind of confront and engage. And there's a connection because I went to the neo-Nazi headquarters and, I dealt with a lot of these extremists back then who, of course, part of their agenda is not just being anti-Black and Mexican and Chinese. It's also being anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish. And
all right. Well, I guess I'll just end with this. We do have a What's in the Box segment. In the box, we have a bunch of movies. We pull a movie out each week and watch it for the following week. And in this box, we have people put movies in that are either personal to them or are like, this movie's really good and no one talks about it. What's a movie you would like to put into the box?
Well, obviously, we're talking about An American Bombing. That's going to be on Tuesday on Max and HBO. But if I had to choose, I'm going to promote another film of mine that is called Slam. It won Sundance in 1998, and it won the Camera d'Or in Cannes that spring. And thank you, Academy of Motion Pictures and Sundance Institute in UCLA. They are doing film preservation and they're now working with indies, and they decided to do a 4K restoration of Slam, and the commercial release by Kino Lorber starts on April 26th. So that's a movie that, although it's 25 years old, we just played it at the Billy Wilder Theater in LA at UCLA. And some of the young people who had never seen it, I was talking to her afterwards, and they said to me that if there hadn't been a flip phone in the film, they would have thought I shot it last summer. It's incredibly relevant also, and I hope people can check it out. I know it's a bit of self-promotion, but I do think it's a film that deserves to be seen by a whole new generation.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. And An American Bombing, The Road to April 19th, as you mentioned, will be on Max April 16th. I would encourage anyone to watch this. It's very triggering, very engaging, and a very good documentary. Might just put it on again after we're done here. But Mark Levin, thank you for joining me today.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too.